Okay. State convention training. Just screen on the other side of that thing one of these days. So the main focus of this one is to go over the schedule because it's a week-long convention. A lot of people look at what's posted or the contacts going out and they think it's a weekend thing, or it's Friday, Saturday, or at most Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But try to get the point across to people that just like anything else in politics, politics belongs to those that show up. And when you have 9,000 people or 150 legislators or 31 senators, even whatever the field is that you're in, trying to get it all done in the one room in those few days just isn't going to happen. So all the work gets front loaded onto committees. And those committees start meeting this Monday at noon. So if you want to do more than show up and vote for things that are pretty much already figured out, if you want to participate, find out what's going on, tell other people what's going on, impact the outcome, then you want to try to find a way to get there when the committees are meeting. You basically have three options. You can either just show up and vote with whatever gets put in front of you, or you can just show up starting on Thursday and let other people tell you what's going on in the committees that were there and hope they're telling you the right thing. Or you can figure out a way to show up yourself, tag team with somebody else, whatever. I don't know how much of the mail you're getting that's started up in the last couple of weeks, but clearly we're going to have some stuff happening at the convention over the platform. Some people were really interested in having a fight over the immigration planks.
I see that.
There are other planks that other people are interested in. I don't know if they're being quite as boisterous or spending the lobby for it, but there will be other topics. But anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. That's what you're watching, so hooray. Review for people that saw the precinct convention talk we did or the SD County convention talk we did. Real briefly, we'll hit on that. We'll talk about what the Texas State Convention has in common with the other conventions that you've participated in, because again, they're all just different scales of the same basic process. We'll talk about how it's different, both from the ones you've done, and then in presidential years we talk about how it's different from other state conventions that have usually gone ahead, people have been watching on the news and stuff, and we'll go ahead and touch on that this time, not because we have those, not because we're really paying attention to those, but just to get the sense of scale. Because the Texas State Convention scale is really off anybody else's charts. And then we'll walk through the agenda for the week. So where are we now? It's real simple. You've watched any of the other talks we've done or training we did. It's a brackets process. It's a basketball championship. It's about getting people together in small enough groups that you can talk about what you want to talk about in your area and let people to move things forward. So we had our precinct conventions, we had our county and SD conventions, now we have our state convention, and that's where we'll end this time. In 2 years, it will continue on into the national convention and nominating our presidential candidate, but we don't do that this time. And I'm not on my regular laptop tonight because I forgot to bring the one that has VGA out, so I'm borrowing one, so I may be a little rough with the controls. But Texas State Convention, but look at the PDFs that are in your hands or attached to the video. Texas State Convention, what it has in common with other conventions. So political parties, like I said from the beginning, are groups of people with similar beliefs who get together to, in common, agree on what those beliefs are that they share and then go out and make them happen in public policy. This whole process is about producing two documents. Our state party platform, that is what we believe, and our state party rules, structure, policy document, that's what we're going to do about it, how we're going to run things, how we're going to make it all happen. So that's one thing they definitely have in common. As far as actual process, just like the other conventions, we start with the temporary chair. Just like the other conventions, we start with the person who is the Republican Party of Texas elected person over that area, in this case the entire state. So our state party chairman starts out as our temporary chair, just like the precinct chairs did, just like the county and SD chairs did. And then just like at those conventions, one of his first jobs once he calls a meeting to order is to elect a permanent convention chair. Just like the other conventions, or at least the county and SD conventions, most of the work's done in committee. Committee. Take nothing out of this, committee, because that's critical and that's where all the work happens. And we've started to see over the last few years people taking that message to heart. I remember when, several years ago, hey Bill, we were lucky to have 5 or 10 people in the committee room, in and out, the whole time we were there for the week. And last time we had more like 100 people, and some of them by the end. So people were engaging and discussing things with the committee members and letting them know what they thought. That was good. Just like any other convention or any other political activity, it belongs to those who show up. Turnout is everything. Delegates need to be there and participate. Alternates need to be there and participate. Even the low alternates, you will get seated at some point. It never doesn't happen. People are going to get tired and leave. They're going to take a break. They're going to go to lunch early while the business is happening. You're going to have a lot of elected officials on your district's delegate list, people who get added as a prestige thing and come to the convention, but they press the flesh while they're there. They don't sit and vote, so they're not going to be in the room necessarily. In some districts where you had a rough convention, the people, you were new and the people there weren't real welcoming to new people, or there was a fight over the group that believes this and the group that believes that. Sometimes the ones that are in the majority aren't exactly nice, and they'll fill up the spots with everybody they can come up with who's never going to show up, and give you the last alternate spot, hoping you won't come, because why would you? You're not going to get seated. Well, the reality is nobody above you is going to show up. So, and nobody ever believes this on this, right? They all hear it and they smile and nod, but I'm alternate number 412. I'm never going to get seated. I'm alternate number 150. And then they don't come, and they find out that their friend who was 4 down from them got seated on the second day and the rest of the convention. Told you so.
Also clear.
Yeah. And even if you're not a delegate or an alternate, if you find out about this too late, or you've got friends who find out about it too late and they still want to participate, come out and be a guest. Come out and be a volunteer. Run around, see how it goes. If nothing else, you'll be less out of the loop next time. You'll understand better how it's going to happen. And the next, the 4-year conventions, the presidential ones, are the really big deal. So show up and watch and treat it as a practice run, even if you're not a delegate. Or just show up and be there for those that are delegates that need someone to go get them a bottle of water while they're sitting in a 3-hour caucus meeting and don't want to get up and lose their chance to vote. Different from the other conventions you've done this cycle, it's even more formal. It's not a few people in a room like a precinct convention. It's not a couple hundred people in a room like an SD convention. It's 9,000 delegates, 9,000 alternates potential in the Fort Worth Convention Center, and it is huge. It's not, who wants to talk, okay, you want to talk, say something. It's not walk to the microphone. It's the convention chair. There's microphones around, 5 mics around the room with lights on them, and the convention chair going, I have a red light on that microphone. That's how you're getting recognized, because you went to the microphone and said, I want to speak in opposition. Mr. Sergeant at Arms, who is controlling this microphone, he pushes the red button, and the convention, it's this kind of thing going on. It's like a big old game show arena, for lack of a better phrase. So it's very formal. Signal lights and the microphones. In your caucuses, depending on how your district does it, you may well have assigned seating alphabetically, because they pay a lot of attention to the alternate seating, right? If you've got 300 delegates and 100 alternates, they want to know who's there as delegates and who's getting up and leaving and all that kind of stuff, so they can have the alternates coming in, sitting down at the right time. They're kind of fast and loose with that at most of the county conventions, with the precinct convention alternates, and even on the floor of the full convention, they're kind of fast and loose about it, because it's just a big room. But in your caucuses, it gets a lot more controlled. Sergeant at Arms will be by the doors checking who's coming and going, and credentials and all that kind of stuff. Again, depending on your district. Some districts do it one way, some do it another. There's 31 of them. We have more primary business at this one than we had at the previous ones. The previous ones are all about elect your delegates, by all means, to the next level, and pass any resolutions you want to pass on to the next level. If this were a national year, we would do those things. It's not a national year, so we don't. We actually make our final decisions on our platform and our rules here. But every time, we also elect our board of directors. So as I've said, the party doesn't just appear and disappear overnight for an election. It doesn't try to call up 9,000 delegates every 2 weeks to say, okay, we got sued again over redistricting. I need 9,000 delegates in the room to decide what to do. We have to decide if we're going to spend money on this campaign or if we're going to spend money on opening a regional office over here. 9,000 delegates, let's get on the phone and figure that out. We don't do that, right? We elect, like any large organization, we elect a board of directors to do that work for us. We call it in Texas the State Executive Committee. And every organized party in Texas has one. We're the Republican Party, so State Republican Executive Committee. There's also an SDEC for the Democrats, an SLEC for the Libertarians. It's composed of one man and one woman from every Senate district in the state that's in your party. So 31 times 2 for us. And then the state party chair and vice chair. So it's a 64-member board of directors. And that's even too big to get together all the time. They meet quarterly. They elect an executive committee of themselves that's composed of about 12 people that meets even more regularly to look at stuff. It meets on the phone at the drop of a hat when they need to decide something quickly. And like I said, we will make our final decisions on what our party rules and our party platform are going to be for the next 2 years. Which this is the only convention that does that. Everybody else just sent suggestions and delegates along to carry those suggestions forward. We're going to make our actual decisions. Like I said, not real relevant in a non-presidential year, but worth noting just the size of the thing. We're not like other states. We are a 9,000 delegate convention. I don't know why I even bother putting 5 to 9,000. There's in the rules, there's a floor and there's a ceiling. We can be as low as 5,000, as large as 9. We usually top out at the 9. And that 9 is what it is because that's as big as several of the convention centers in the state can hold. Otherwise, it might go bigger because we like it to be big in Texas. But just for comparison, some of the ones that made news last cycle, Louisiana's 150 delegate convention. Right? Our caucuses are twice that size. Nevada's 1,200, Oklahoma's 1,400. To the national convention in a national year, our at-large slate is larger than the entire delegation of all but 17 other states. So what's going on when you're there if you've never been? It's kind of like trying to explain to people what kids what summer camp's going to be like. It's a week-long thing, and what goes on. You're going to have the convention, and you've been to a half-hour precinct convention and a several-hour-long SD county convention. Well, this is a 3-day, 5-day convention. What does it look like? We're going to have the big room where we come together all together in the state convention, 9,000 delegates voting. But we're also going to do a lot of our business split up among caucuses, which you haven't seen yet if you haven't done the state convention. You are going to get together with your SD10 or your SD9, 12, 5, 17, wherever you're from, caucus at various times, and just be with those 300, 500 people for a while, and then come back to the big room and go back and forth. Which means that just as far as moving parts go, there's one state convention and 31 SD caucuses that look just like conventions themselves. They do a lot of the same things you're used to a convention doing. It looks a lot for an outsider like 32 conventions are all happening at the exact same time in the same set of buildings. Know what your Senate district is. If it's your first time through and you're thinking in terms of your county at this point, stop it. Learn what your Senate district is if you haven't yet, because that's how you're organized at state, and you're not going to go to a meeting for Liberty, I'm just picking some little ones I know of, to Liberty County. There's not going to be one. There's going to be a SD 17 maybe caucus that meets. There's not going to be a Dallas County or a Tarrant County meeting. There's going to be an SD9 that's got Dallas and Tarrant people there, SD10 that's Tarrant people, SD12 that's Denton, Tarrant people, etc. Only two SDs in the whole state are inside of just one county, so that when they go to their caucus, they're seeing the same people they saw at their county convention. Everybody else, you're going to go to a caucus and you're going to have the group that came out of your SD
county convention, and you're going to have the ones that came from the other counties in your SD. Make friends with them. That's why you're there, right? And since those things all look like conventions, you're going to have 32 temporary chairs and 32 permanent chair elections. Your caucuses are all going to do that, just like the state convention does. Who is the temporary chair of your caucus? It's a person who is there's not a standing person really in the party structure for that one. So the state party chair makes those appointments. He makes them based on recommendations provided to him by the SREC members for that district. As in, the SREC members they each give him a name, and he is allowed to appoint from among those names. So if they each give him the same person, he gets to pick between that one person. Like Russian voting, I don't know. It's a good thing. If they each give him a different name, he picks from between those two, right? We did actually have one weird one this time where we have a vacant SD for SRC members down in the valley before they made their appointments. I think there was a death and there was a resignation, so he ended up having to just appoint on his own. But through the course of this thing, then, you're going to participate in those SREC elections, or nominations first. Sorry, 2 SREC elections, 2 state chair nominations, and we'll talk about how that works, 2 state chair elections, 5 state committee members across 31 SDs. There's almost 300 elections that happen in these 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Actually, Thursday, Friday. There's no elections on Saturday. So between Thursday and Friday, and in a presidential year, it's like 3 times that many. It's ridiculous the number of moving parts that are going on this thing. Know your district and make a buddy, like a swim buddy, to follow around. Yeah.
Are we concerned about the congressional districts this time?
No, there's no congressional district work this time. Each one of you will participate because you're in one district in one convention with 4 sessions, 1 caucus with 2 sessions, and 13 different elections. That's the main thing you're doing while you're there, is these elections, and sitting there and handing out ballots and hearing speeches and filling out the ballots and handing them back in. And did somebody win? No, we got to do it again, over and over and over and over again. We will also debate the platform and rules on the floor, but most of your time that's business oriented will be spent electing people. So what does that look like, right? By now you all read the state party rules and memorized them and know all the things that have to happen at state convention, which is great of you. I appreciate that. Maybe not. If you will remember, though, the precinct convention, there's a rule in there that says this, I think it's 19, this is the agenda of a precinct convention. You will do these 7 things in this order. Rule 30 says this is the agenda of a SD county convention. You will do these things in more or less this order. There is no rule that says this is the agenda of the state convention and you will do these things in this order. It doesn't exist. There are about a half dozen different rules that says at the state convention, at some point, we will do this. We will do this. We will do this. And you kind of have to, it's like a story problem from math in school. You got to kind of take the different, the cow and the duck and the donkey and line them all up and figure what has to cross the river first. And you get up with an order that we have used for I don't know how many decades at this point. It doesn't really change. So I can tell you what that order is historically. It's posted on the state party website right now at this URL. It's kind of in flux. So please understand everything I'm about to tell you could change. There's no rule that says it has to happen this way. There's only convention and there is an ordering that has to happen. But by all means, pay attention to the agenda, pay attention to whatever they hand you when you show up at the convention, pay attention to any messages coming from your caucus on what to be where. On that note, by the way, again, know your SD and know where they're meeting. The Fort Worth Convention Center, we were there last time as well, and we kind of had a problem where technically we had the floor space for everything, but we had caucuses that were like, SD4 was sitting in a room, and you're on the one corner, and the partition wall is like right here, and there's another guy on the other side that close, and you could hear each other, and it got disruptive. So they have taken more conference room space across downtown Fort Worth. So some of the SDs will be technically off site. You won't be at the convention center. You'll be at the hotel across the street type stuff. So make sure you know where you are. and know what kind of time you have to work with to get back and forth. Anyway, the agenda. And like I said, this agenda starts on Monday. It does not start on Thursday. The business of the convention starts on Monday. We ought to get called to order as an entire 9,000 delegate convention on Thursday, but the business of the convention starts on Monday at noon. Temporary rules and platform committees will start meeting because we're not going to figure out our platform. We're not going to have the immigration fight starting out with 9,000 delegates at a microphone, ready, set, go. You have 2 hours, figure it out. We're not going to have our rules conversation that way. We're going to start out ahead of time over several days. Who picks these committees? Your SREC members did. If you're new, hopefully by now you're starting to understand why the SREC matters. Everybody always says, I don't know what was an SREC, I don't care, until they get to this part and they say, well, who picked those committees? Your SREC members did. There's one person on each of those committees from each SD, so 31 people plus a committee chair appointed by the state party chairman. All right? And it's the same process. They actually put forward recommendations. The party chair picks from among their recommendations. One or two people, or picks one person from among one or two people. What will they do on Monday? They will start out with organizing themselves. I'll get a bit cynical here because I'm tired of seeing it. In rules at least, they'll hand out, here are the supplemental rules for this committee, and no, the audience doesn't get to see a copy of them, and anybody have any objections or amendments? Okay, all in favor say aye, we have our supplemental rules. Now you can see what they look like and find out when you're allowed to testify and these kinds of things. They'll do that self-arrangement thing first. Platform actually will historically split up into subcommittees right out the gate almost. They'll take the 6 major sections of the platform and have a subcommittee for each with 5 people on each one, right? Because there's 31 of them and there's somebody who's an extra. And I believe they've already made those assignments. I like to point out to people, because this is one of the gotchas. If you're ever on these committees or you're helping someone on these committees, there's a lot of inertia. There's a lot of, this is how it's always been done. So the committee chair will have mailed out instructions, or this is how we're going to work type stuff. Always understand that's up to the committee. Just like anywhere else, he's a chairman, he's a referee, he's not a coach or an owner of a team. And if you don't like the way, the thing that happened in Tampa in 2012 very much started process-wise in that rules committee when Sununu said, this is how the committee will operate. And here are your chains and manacles, put them on, please. And nobody really got up and said no. Nobody got up and said, no, I don't like this part that says no one can talk to the committee members except for RPT staff or RNC staff, who it turns out are Romney campaign staffers here doing Ben Ginsburg's thing of setting up the next 10 cycles of elections. That's your chance to say, no, I don't want to do it that way, and let's talk about it and have your votes. Nobody should be offended you want to talk about how you want to do it. Hopefully they've mailed the committee ahead of time, they usually do, and given them an idea so you can talk about it then. If they haven't, then absolutely you should say something if you don't like how it's happening. But none of us are committee members, so we'll be in there observing and testifying where we get to and see how it goes. I don't think any of us are committee members. Some of you watching this are, though. And then after that, what happens? So they'll organize themselves. Platform will split into subcommittees. Rules usually doesn't. And then rules will start with, they've got temporary rules has 2 tasks. Permanent rules has another task. What do I mean temporary, permanent? There will be 2 committees here. Just like at your SD and county, you had a platform committee and a nominations committee that met beforehand, and then at the convention you elected a chairman who picked permanent committees, and maybe that was a hand wave at your convention, because it doesn't matter a whole lot. All the work's already done. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a big deal. These guys that are gearing up for committee fights, right, are talking about that part of the process, because they're saying, the immigration people are saying, we're on this side, and this side is also out there opposing us. So watch the committee, watch what your committee member does, and if you find out he's not playing for our team, he's playing for the other team, consider replacing them on the permanent committee with somebody from our team, right? That's the kind of thing that happens. So we'll get to that more, but point being, temporary rules, temporary has 2 jobs, permanent rules will have 1 job. Temporary rules, 2 jobs are: number 1, give us the rules for the convention itself. Like your rules committee at your county level did. They gave you debate limits, or they gave you, we're going to do this thing this way type discussion. They will give us rules that say the agenda for an SD caucus is this. You have the election for the SREC committee man before the committee woman, or vice versa. Somebody somewhere keeps track, and every 2 years they switch the order. I can't remember how it was last time. I think the women went first last time, which means the men will go first this time. Somebody's job is to keep track of this, not mine. There will be also rules in there. There's a funny one in there this year that says anybody who wants to run for party chair has to have filed for the office by 10:30 a.m. or something Thursday, which is like 2 hours before the convention comes to order. So the convention will be asked to vote that rule through as an ex post facto thing. Not a fan of that one. We'll see if we can get that one changed. But anyway, they'll be talking about temporary rules. As soon as they're done with the temporary rules that they want to recommend to the convention, they'll put those aside and they'll move on, starting with Rule 1 of the Republican Party of Texas, and all the way down, one after the other to 43. They'll go through the whole list and they'll work them over one time and make any changes, any suggested changes they want to make. This is temporary, right? And won't actually be final work product. They're doing, so they got 2 things. Their temporary, their rules for the convention will move forward out of them. They'll go on. They'll throw it over the wall to the SREC next, who will throw it over the wall to the convention to adopt as soon as we start. Their once through of the RPT rules won't go to the convention, won't go to the SREC. It will go to the permanent committee. They'll basically report, the temporary committee will report to the permanent committee. This is where we are, y'all. Take it up where we left off, right? They'll get through them all once. The permanent committee will take up that report, start at Rule 1, and walk all the way through them, all the way down. Temporary rules will do this across 3 days. Permanent rules will do it across 2 hours. So yes, you can change stuff if you don't like it, but in the permanent committee, but it's really hard. Be there in temporary if you can. Tuesday, though, June 3rd, that process starting at 9 a.m. continues. By then, rules will be well into their pass through the rules. The party platform will be in subcommittees and dealing with all the stuff they're dealing with, which might be interesting this year. Wednesday, same thing, 9 a.m., temporary rules and platform continues what they were doing. 3 days of this they go through. Pick a day if you can't be at all of them. Temporary credentials will start meeting for the first time, and I think the only time, Wednesday at 9 a.m., if they haven't changed that time yet. Temporary credentials, their job is to look at at the roll that came in from all the different SD county lower conventions and say, yes, that's correct, yes, wait, that guy didn't vote, that one's not affiliated, that one's in the wrong district, red flags need to get raised, and they're going to look at those things and make recommendations to the convention for what to do about them. There can also be challenges. There can be, my convention elected this person and shouldn't have. There can be my convention was really unfair and we didn't think it was being done correctly, so we got up and left and held our own convention in the parking lot, and both, 2 of them submit their sets of minutes, and the committee's got to decide which one's legit. Happened last time, right? You had an executive committee and a county chair in East Texas that weren't on speaking terms with each other, literally. And because of the weird way the rules interacted with redistricting delays last time, there was actually a scenario where the county chair held a county convention. The EC did not agree with it. They held their own, and they both had kind of co-equal claim to legitimacy and illegitimacy in the way they did things. And they each sent in their stack, and the committee met and said, well, basically the county chair did not act in good faith, and just straight up broke rules. The county executive committee did act in good faith, and while they couldn't do things that are assigned to the county chair, they did it as best they could. We're going to recommend that the convention upheld and sat the EC's delegation. This time I'm aware we have some challenges out of South Texas involving a county convention where the allegation is that the meetings weren't open, the committee meetings. It was get out, it was lock the door, it was put chairs up against the door type stuff. And so there are challenges filed in that one. And this is where they'll be meeting to make hearing testimony and figuring out what recommendation they want to make to the convention. Whether or not the people challenged are officials of that convention who it's alleged broke the rules deliberately, and if Rule 11 specifically allows those people to be challenged, even if they would otherwise be legitimate delegates and removed. It's a penalty box challenge. And if it's upheld by the convention, they won't be seated as delegates. So those things will happen, and then at 4 o'clock the SRAC meets. They have a meeting, the 64 of them. And they're going to look at reports from these guys and decide and maybe amend them and then send them on to the convention. It's not like at SD where it was a rules committee that reported to the convention directly. We're going to route them through the SRAC here. So they're going to adopt the temporary rules, which they're going to get recommended by the credentials committee. They're going to adopt a temporary agenda, which they just recommend to themselves. They don't even get that from a committee. They're going to adopt temporary rules, which are the rules of the convention. And then they've got on there to adopt temporary organization, even though that committee meets later. And I think that's a bit of a twist they need to untangle. The rules were changed last time, so there's some changes in how temporary organization works now. But whatever, they'll sort that out. Temporary org being the committee that recommends to the convention who should be the convention chair, who should be the convention secretary. Thursday then is when all the paperwork says the convention starts. Come out, Thursday, June 5th at 11 o'clock, after you've had 3 days of committee meetings, right? After a lot of this work's happened. This is when the 9,000 will show up. So at 11 we'll have our first big room meeting. 9,000 delegates come in, find your district, sit down, get any alternates seated you need. And if you're there and you know that there's alternates, they'll be like seated near you but not with you. You should have sergeant at arms in your caucus chair in your delegation who are dealing with that and making sure alternates get seated, but sometimes they miss it. Sometimes it's busy and loud and they don't get it, or they don't think it's pay attention if you've got alternates that you care about getting seated, or you've got people that you just see up there from your district and say, hey, Mr. Caucus Chair, we got alternates, can we seat them now? Anytime a vote's coming up that you think that's important to you, one of the biggest things you want to do for fairness is make sure alternates are seated that should be. And if you can't get cooperation from your caucus chair or they're not around or whatever, that's hit a microphone for recognition, and Mr. Convention Chairman, booming voice over the microphone, point of personal privilege, we have alternates who aren't seated. Can you please instruct the caucus chairs and sergeant at arms to get the alternates seated? Anyway, big room, seating, alternates. We're going to start out with our temporary credentials report. These are the delegates who were elected from their lower conventions, and there's no question about it. This is the temporary rule of the convention. All in favor say aye. It's bootstrapping, right? The people that are there are voting that they're the people that are allowed to be there, because there's no other way to do it. We are the authority. But that's the part where if, hey, that guy's been challenged and why is he sitting here, that's a point of order. He should not be on the temporary rule because we haven't heard the next part of the credentials report, which is these are the challenges and these are what we recommend be done for each one. All in favor say aye, opposed nay. Okay? I can tell you right now, I don't think those people that did that stuff should be seated. I'll try to sit through those committee meetings and see if anything changes my mind, but if it gets to the floor and they're saying seat them, I'll be hoping other people hit a microphone and amend that report and say, no, we don't seat them. They behaved badly. There are consequences. After that, temporary rules will give their report, and all they will report on is what the rules of the convention should be. These are the debate limits. This is the agenda stuff. Those kinds of things. Then organization comes up and says, and now we're going to elect our convention chair. This is who the convention chair should be. This is something we fought about for a long time. Some of you that have done past conventions will remember there was a lawsuit in 2008 There was a fight in 2010. There was a fight that kind of became an issue of the who will be the state chairman campaign. Which one will fix this problem? And then in 2012, we finally got to a consensus that says, yes, we will elect the permanent convention chair at this point before we go into anything else. However, we will not be able to elect the convention chair unless, and I think it's a majority of those delegates that were elected are registered as having shown up. We're not going to start the convention before people get there, which will be interesting to see if that one plays out any funny ways. But it is what it is. Regardless, we will elect a permanent convention chair at that point. Who will it be? It will probably be Chairman Ministeri. Normally, I'm one of the ones, and there's a lot of people that mind that at the state level especially, the party chair has other work to do and has plenty of chance to be on stage. And maybe is not the best, they're great at running a party, raising money, but maybe they're not the best at running a meeting. Somebody else should get up here and run the meeting for us. And we're going to elect a party chair later, so if they're a candidate for party chair, they really shouldn't be running the meeting because it's just free airtime, right? However, that having been said, 2 years ago, we had a lot of contention we were trying to clean up in the party, a lot of fights that have been going on, and all the different factions were trying to figure out who can we agree on that will be fair to be our convention chair, and nobody could come up with anybody except for Steve Ministeri. So all of us that have that concern in our bag put it away and said, fine, we'll let Steve should be the convention chair. We'll all agree on that. And he ran an amazing convention. It was an amazing convention. No one perfect, nothing is, but it was an amazing convention. I think it's probably going to go that way again this time. I haven't heard anything otherwise. There's even, talk that when he's no longer party chair, he'll still come back and run the conventions for us because he's really good at it. But regardless, we'll have a convention chair election among one or more candidates. And then if the party chair and vice chair candidates will speak, because we're going to elect them later, and we're going to hear speeches from them all, because we're in the big room and we won't come back in the big room until we've already nominated people. So this is when they get to speak to the whole room. It's their only chance. Ministeri's running for party chair with the caveat he will resign sometime at the beginning of next year for health reasons, but he's willing to stay on through the general if we want him under those conditions. I have not heard anybody else is going to run against him. I've heard rumors. There's always rumors, but I've run them all down to the person being rumored, and they're all, no, I'm not running. Vice Chair Melinda Fredericks has announced she will not seek re-election, so the only name that's been thrown in that ring is Amy Clark. We have what I will say silly gender inequality rules in the party that say that you have to have a man and a woman. If the chair is a man, the vice chair has to be a woman. If the chair is a woman, the vice chair has to be a man. So if Ministeri is the chair, only a woman can run for vice chair. So Amy Clark is in. If anybody else wants to and they're a woman, go for it. Let's have a race. Yahoo. And then that same day, so we're still on Thursday here. But we'll get through all of that hopefully by 5 p.m. because that's when our first SD caucus is. We will leave the big room and SD1 will go over there, and SD2 will go over there, and SD3 will go over there, and SD4 will go around the block out the door, and 31 groups will wander off to their assigned caucuses, right? And the first thing we will do in that caucus is, dun dun dun, elect a caucus chair. The permanent chair will the temporary caucus chair will start at the meeting and we'll elect a permanent caucus chair. Then we should hear reports from the temporary committees. I say should because in past years, the rules committee that gives us the rules for the convention gives us the agenda, and they've left temporary committee reports off of there and said, and you can't add anything to them. That's another fight we had and won last time. Can we get temporary committee reports on the agenda? But expect to hear in your caucus temporary committee members report on what's going on. If they don't, pop up and ask for it. They really ought to tell you what's going on, what they did in their committee, because the next thing you're going to do is elect permanent committee members. You're going to elect a permanent member to the Rules Committee, a permanent member to the Platform and Resolutions Committee, a permanent Credentials Committee member, because Credentials still has like a paperwork rule. They already dealt with the challenges, but they'll still be, clicking the ticker of how many people are in the convention, right? And have shown up and all those great things for quorum purposes. That organization committee's done. We did their work, right? They gave us our permanent convention chair. So we don't elect a permanent member there. However, we pick a new committee instead. We have a nominations committee. What does the nominations committee do? They handle the work of actually making the recommendation to the floor of who should be the state party chair and vice chair, and they do the reporting on who we elected as our SRAC members. This part gets a little hairy, so I'll get into it more in a second, but start preparing your brain to follow some Rube Goldbergisms. So that caucus meets and has some elections. That's all it does, right? It has an election. Here's some reports that feed into having some more elections. If you're following that platform debate or the rules debate, this is where if you didn't like the way your committee member represented you on that committee, you would want to replace them with somebody else. Or if you like what they did and somebody else is trying to replace them, support the one you like, right? Sometimes people that did temporary are just tired and done. They want to go see Fort Worth. They say, I'm done, make somebody else do the permanent one. Regardless, get done, because at 7 o'clock, permanent platform starts meeting. And at 8, permanent rules and credentials start meeting. And they will usually tell you in these committees, at least in rules, that they have until like 10 o'clock to be done because their report has to get printed for distribution at the convention. I don't like that argument, and I want them to fix this sometime, but we haven't gotten to that bridge yet. There's no other way to look at it, but that permanent rules had 3 days to meet, temporary rules had 3 days to meet. Permanent rules, which was an appointed committee, permanent rules, the grassroots elected committee gets like 2 hours. I'm not okay with that. We are a grassroots party, and it's great, bottom up, and it's great that we have these elections, but why do we have these elections and give them a couple hours? We can improve on that process one of these days. Regardless, they will meet and they'll finish their work that night, and those committees will adjourn. And then Friday at 8 a.m., we will not go back into the big room to start the day Friday. We'll go back to the caucus where we left off, and we will have our second SD caucus. And what do we do there? We elect our SRAC members. So we will have speeches, candidate nominations and speeches and votes. And we'll pick our SRAC members, 1 man and 1 woman in each district. There's a lot of contested races this time. All over the state. There are people, our SRAC members have term limits in Texas. It's a 2-year term. We elect them at every state convention, but we limit them to 4 consecutive 2-year terms in the same seat. So basically you get 8 years, and then you got to sit off, and then you can come back again if you can get elected again. Or sometimes redistricting moves you from this place to that place, and your clock starts over. Or you move. There's somebody running in SD9 who had lived in Dallas before and has moved, and so she's running for her first time in SD9 type stuff. We also recommend our party chair and vice chair. And this is where that Rube Goldberg thing starts. So like I said, on Thursday night we elected a member to the nominations committee. Okay, and their 2 jobs are take whatever we say about our SRAC members, walk that down to the committee room and report it, and they don't get to change it. The committee doesn't get an option. We elected them. They have to pick who we elected. Technically they pick who we elected because it's their only option. However, for party chair and vice chair, it's a little crazier. And I don't know that we have any contests this time, but let's pretend we do, or let's wind it back to 2010 when we had a 3-way race for party chair, so I can walk through how this works and why your nominations committee person matters. 31 Senate districts, okay? At this caucus are going to hear nominations and speeches and vote on who they want to be party chair and vice chair. It's going to look like an election. It's going to look exactly like an election. Exactly like these SRAC elections did. Except that when SD10 elects our SRAC members, that's up to us. It only affects us, right? This is like electing our congressman. It's not up to somebody else in CD12 who CD6 picks. This is picking the president, though. And if SD10 picks Bob and Jane as our party chair and vice chair, and SD9 picks Tom and Sue, right? How do you resolve that across 31 SDs? You do it with the committee. So your committee member you elected to nominations is going to take whoever your district picked. They're going to walk down to the committee room at their meeting, which will show up on here in a bit, and they're pledged to support your district's picks on the first round of voting. And if there's only one candidate in the race, that's easy. They won. Congratulations. If there's two candidates in the race, after one round of voting, somebody wins because somebody got the majority of the votes. 2010, there were 3 candidates for party chair and 2 candidates for vice chair. So when they sat down, first round of voting, it was, I don't remember, it was 40, 30, 30, right? For example, nobody wins. Now what happens? Now your nominations committee member is free to vote for who they want to vote for. So if there's a race, especially if there's a 3-way or more race, either at this convention or a future one, you need to pick someone for the nominations committee who will support your pick. Because you can elect somebody who will do it, they'll vote for Tom and Sue on the first round, but they really want to vote for Dick and Mary. Or more likely you have that first round of voting goes down 40, 40, 20, and your district was one of the 20. Well, that guy maybe withdraws or loses, or it's not going to happen. So you need to know that they're going to go for your second best choice too, right? So that's where the horse trading politics hits the state convention kind of the hardest, because it's a lot of second choice. Who's your second choice going to be, and what values do you want from party chair type stuff? Again, not seeing that happen this time, but having lived through it at least once or twice. It can come up at any point. Eventually, they're going to get majority picks that they are going to recommend. These aren't final choices. They're going to recommend to the convention as party chair and vice chair. And then, we got all that done in 2 hours. Ha ha ha. Some of these timelines are a little wishful thinking, which is good for training, right? Don't assume these timelines are hard and we're going to hit them. The caucuses can take a really, really long time, and this second general session may be sitting there until noon, 1 o'clock, waiting for all the caucuses, waiting for this committee to finish and all the caucuses to come back and all that stuff to happen. Bring your granola bars, bring your bottled water. You can bring all that stuff into convention. If you've got your little kids, bring their coloring books. Bring your own coloring books. I don't know. Guy in caucus with me last time sat there, I hadn't met him before, sat there with his tablet and played a zombie game the whole time. Do what you got to do to stay occupied. Politics belongs to those that show up and stay there. This is a few days of your life every 2 years. Be there for the long haul. People are starting to ask me, they don't see the parties on this agenda. Or they're starting to say, I'm getting the invitations to all these parties. Which ones do I go to? If you're asking me the question, I am a rules and process guy telling you this is what matters. I'm going to tell you to skip all of that. Sorry, fundraising group of the RPT who needs the money, I understand. Until the business is done at least. You're going to find me at these committee meetings if you're looking for me. If there's a banquet and a committee meeting, I'm going to be at the committee meeting. If there's a breakout session with a great speaker in a committee meeting, I'm still going to be at the committee meeting. I understand why they do all that. You've got the people there. You want to keep them there. Fundraising, obviously, but pick what you're going to pick. I'm always going to come down on the business. 10 a.m. or thereabouts, we're going to have our second general session. We're going to go back to the big room, and now we're done with our caucuses. We won't go back to them. They'll still sit in your districts in the big room, but everything from on out is big room work. We're going to have a permanent credentials report, which is basically going to be this many people have registered as attending, so these are our current quorum numbers. At noon, the nominations committee is going to have that meeting I talked about, right? That's when they're actually going to do that while we're eating lunch. And then, so it's not that wishful thinking, because that report doesn't matter a whole lot. So, we had from 8 until actually like 2 to get the work done, until noon. Because at 2, we're going to come in for our third general session, and that committee is going to report. They're going to tell us who the SRAC members are, and we're going to all vote, all in favor, say aye without amending, because we don't get to amend it. It's just, that's the law. That's the rule. And then we're going to elect our party chair and vice chair. That committee is going to report, we recommend Bob and Sue as party chair and vice chair. Can we nominate somebody else at that point? It depends. We're trying, this committee process is to not let the thing happen, not have 17 people running on the floor that have no support when there's 9,000 delegates. The way it works is you can elect someone from the floor at this point. If back when those caucuses voted, somebody got support, won 3 or more caucuses, then they are eligible to be placed in nomination. So if you only won 3, do you want to take it to the floor? Or maybe you do. Maybe the 3 you won are the biggest one in Harris County, the biggest one in Tarrant County, and the biggest one in Dallas County or something. And you think that your votes, and you got like 49% in every other one across the entire state. Maybe the math looks good for you. In 2008, when Paul Perry ran, he took it to the floor just because. That was 2008. There have been a lot of runs against the party chair structure that had been there before, and no one ever took it to the floor, and the delegates were kind of fed up with it. They wanted a fight. He gave them a fight, and it helped Munisteri win in 2010. In 2010, the incumbent was not the pick of the committee, and she chose to take it to the floor because she was the incumbent and had gotten her 3 and then thought she could pull it off on the floor, and she didn't. It can get exciting though, because if you take that to the floor, it's an election from the full floor. So speeches, and then 9,000 delegates with their pieces of paper, and multiple rounds of balloting potentially. It's exciting. When that's done, then we have. Now this is different, because normally this would be like the end of things. In the convention always is a week long, but the business part historically in a non-presidential year is 2 days. It's like Friday, it's Thursday, Friday, and in presidential years it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and all Saturday is spent doing presidential election work, right? National work. Well, we had a presidential year last time. We had the 3 days, and it wasn't enough time. We had a convention. We actually got to debate things, and lo and behold, we didn't have enough time. We had our platform and rules debate Friday night up until we just had to adjourn to go to the banquet, and then they came back at 9:30 and kept going till like midnight, and still didn't have enough time. So Steve this time said, "Hey, people want to debate stuff. Should we go ahead and do the 3 days? We normally do 2. Let's do 3 and have a whole extra day for debate." And people said, "We like that. Let's do that." Then they shoved the straw poll in there and took back part of that. I don't mind. I mean, the straw poll was a cool thing to do, and it won't actually take them a lot of the time. But bottom line is that once we get that election done, all of the rest of the day, Friday, is the permanent rules debate. So that committee will come out and give their permanent report, and we'll debate things and amend things and vote on them. Maybe we're done at 5:30. If we are, great, go on to the banquet or whatever happens at 5:30. If we're not, we will stop at 5:30 and come back at 9:30, just like last time we did for platform. And we'll be there all night long doing rules if we have to. I'm excited about this because we never have enough time to talk about rules. And if you didn't notice, I like the rules. And then Saturday, we have a 4th general session, which is not a thing that is normally done. And its entire purpose will be the platform report. And I didn't copy, but there's another, if we're done by lunch, we'll be done. Otherwise, we'll have lunch and then come back type thing. And then I think there's an event, and the straw poll winner gets announced when we finally, you got to stick around at the end of platform if you want to hear who the straw poll winner is. That's your carrot to stick it out through the whole thing. But Saturday starting at 9:15, that's when we get the permanent platform, and I'm pretty sure that'll be an all-day event. We'll have this fun immigration discussion and gun, open carry, platform stuff discussion, and
Article 5. Maybe.
Article 5, I'm sure, will make a resurgence. The Huffington Post and others are reporting that a couple of groups, drug legalization or decriminalization groups and homosexual Republican groups, got denied tables at the convention because the current SRAC rule is that if you're advocating an issue that the platform is opposed to, you don't get a table. That's a place they're enforcing the platform. So, but it's got those groups, the Republicans that are in those groups, way more interested in talking about platform than they usually are. So we may even have those fights. We'll see. It's exciting. Hooray, convention. Anywho, wow, made it in just over an hour that time. That's what state convention looks like. Questions? Have you guys all done it before?
I've been once.
I'm trying to think of the normal questions people have. It's always, if I can only be there for one day, which day matters the most? And there's no answer. What do you care about the most? If you care about platform stuff, then, the final answer is on Saturday. But it may be more valuable to be there Monday or Tuesday and not even Saturday if you can affect the committee. It depends on you. I would at least pick a committee day and the final vote day. If you care about rules, it's a committee day and it's Friday. If you care about the SREC, who you've seen through this process what they do, who if Munisteri is elected chair and then resigns, it is the SREC that will pick the next party chair. Who will be the chair through the 2016 cycle.
Wow.
And I haven't seen it happen yet, and I'm not there myself or anything. I don't have a horse in the 2016 presidential race at this point. But since they moved our election up to be one of the first, like on the first day you can legally do it, to put Texas in play for the 2016 presidential election, it would not surprise me if we see in Texas what we see in other states, where when that replacement election happens, we see the campaigns that are active come in and run their own horses to be our party chair because they want a favorable convention outcome. Not really the way we want to, that should not certainly be the only thing in the election process for our party chair, but SREC is important this time for sure. And that stuff all happens on Friday. So if that's your thing, then Friday morning is when you're there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
About volunteering. If you're a delegate, can you volunteer?
Sure.
Is there plenty of time to volunteer in addition to being a delegate? Or?
No.
Not really.
There's meetings. There's business happening around the clock. Not many people probably do all the business and only the business, but there's business happening around the clock, and usually more than one thing at a time.
So can a high school student be a volunteer?
There's a page program. I am not connected to it, but if you went to texasgop.org and looked, you could probably find details on the page program, and they have them help out as sergeant at arms too, I think. Because you want ideally to find people who aren't delegates and alternates to do the volunteer work. Mm-hmm. There's registration, volunteering opportunities. There's some of the different groups that have hospitality suites. I'm sure have volunteers, helping out their groups, signing people up and all that. The campaigns will be there. Yeah, there's Republican Party Texas. There's volunteer opportunities.
Okay.
So all the committee meetings are open?
Good question. Republican Party Texas Rule 14 stipulates that any committee or subcommittee meeting of any convention is open by right to all delegates and alternates to that convention. And those people have the right to be in the meeting. They have the right to testify on any matter in front of the committee, and they have a right, as of last time, to record what's going on. If you are not a delegate or an alternate, you don't have the right. The committee can allow you to be there if you're a guest, and I've never seen them try to police it. I've never seen them say only delegates right now. Only reason I can see them doing it that wouldn't raise a fuss would be we just don't have more room in here. There are some exceptions in the credentials committee. If you're involved in a challenge, there are times when you don't get to be in the room. To the testimony part, this is another thing I would like to see them work on. And if you're there and in the committee, you might see some of this stuff come up and help us push for it. How many of you have ever done legislative testimony in Austin or seen how they do legislative testimony in Austin? It's a very exhaustive process. you're a citizen and it's your right to appear before that committee. And they do have limits they're allowed to impose. They rarely do. Basically, if they're going to hear hearing on Bill 1234, they're going to say, who wants to testify on Bill 1234 starting now at 10 a.m. and sign up and let's go. And, 10 a.m., noon, 2 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., midnight, 3 a.m., people still testifying. Anybody else? Are we done? Okay, you still okay? Anybody? They will go until everybody's done. That's one extreme. That's how the legislature does it. And arguments can be made if it's effective or not. It certainly lets us get our message out there. We want to, whatever the thing is we're doing. These committees don't do that at all. They meet for these couple days, and certainly in those couple days they don't have time to hear from everybody on every single issue. But I don't really like where they do it, what they end up doing. Like in rules last time, he did a thing where he said, okay, we'll have an hour of testimony at 11 and at 2 and at 4. And he just, if you want to testify, put it in, and we'll, the secretary, and at 11 we'll just take the stack and run through it. So you might be getting up to testify about a thing that happened 3 hours ago. Or you're testifying about a thing that's going to happen in 2 hours. Maybe. And you didn't get to testify at the point that the thing mattered, and I didn't like that. But we'll see one of these days if we can find a better way to do that. I've talked to the committee members, and a lot of them are of the opinion, we can't let a lot of people talk. You elected, the committee members are your representatives. They need to just be able to work. The legislature can figure it out. I think we can do something a little better than we do now. And if we could elect our committee members earlier than we do and not have them be appointed the whole time, that would be another story too. Other questions? Soapboxes you want to stick under my feet? Okay. Thanks for coming out, guys. Do this again tomorrow, and I'll put tape up, video up, and non-presidential years are lower turnout in general because they're non-presidential years, and most of the voting public cares about the president, thinks that's the election that matters for some reason above all else. So definitely make it out to this one. Even the low alternates, you will find that the attendance is low. It might be spiking a little bit because of the platform fights that are spinning up, but just more people to meet and talk to and convince to agree with you on other stuff. Thanks.